Welcome to Meeting My Bones, My Body is My Business. This is week 2, Standing My Ground. Today I'd like to start by sharing what started this quest to address physical structure differently than I had been, and make explicit the approach I'm using to work with physical structure so you can identify it as we work together in the movement part of this session. 35 years ago, I was introduced the model of our structure as a suspension system, as an explanation for how we are designed to be upright. The coordinating pre-sprung elastic suspension system is an articulation by David Gorman, and here's how he describes it. It's our active, aware opening to the world around us and to the support of the earth that elicits an interplay between gravity and our structure, that activates us into an entire web of tensional support, which springs us into our dynamic, responsive, mobile uprightness. The suspension model is a completely different way of understanding our uprightness than an alignment model. They each have different underlying principles. The support material for this week gives you more information on this model. For me, it was answering many questions I had, and so I needed to test it out. And if it was true, what do I do and how do I teach? If I'm not going to teach alignment, then what do I do? What do I teach? Wholeness in motion is the result of many years of exploring these questions. In the Wholeness in Motion pedagogy, a simplified version, we set up contrast experiences to facilitate the ability to identify my structural changes, to describe, to understand, value, apply, and teach. So I'll use what we did last week in class of the leaning comparison. It was a contrast moment between leaning and not leaning. So identify, can you tell the difference between leaning and not leaning? And try that even now as you are listening to this, sitting or standing. Describe the difference between leaning and not leaning. There's a real art to guiding the development of sensory awareness with specific questions. I'll ask things like, where do you feel more or less work, pressure? Where do you feel pressure or focus of force? And we'll do more of that today. Describe the difference between the feeling of strain and ease. So the second step is to describe. And then we want to understand what we're feeling. And there are two parts of it, global and personal. So globally, this is usually an opportunity for an information update about how the human system works. And this update often comes from the teacher, and it's about developing more accurate interpretations of the sensations we're having. These, of course, these interpretations are subject to further proof because learning is ongoing. I update that often. This avoids idealizing a particular organization and shaming another. It makes sense of both. Each organization has a purpose. So in our exploration, the understanding was about the sensation of effort or strain in leaning is the feeling of your system recruiting more those mover muscles, the ones on the outside, to keep you from falling over. The tension is exactly what you need to not fall over, which is a priority of your system to keep you safe. The easy sensation isn't relaxed. It's the feeling of your musculature active and available to do what you are doing. The outer muscles are free to move you while the inner muscles work in that sprung suspension system to keep you stable and mobile. On a personal level, I might on my own have a comparison, go, well, what is this showing me about how I work? And why does this organization of myself make sense at the moment, even if it isn't the most efficient for what I'm doing? If you watch the moment of embodiment video, the support material for last week, it helps guide that question about what am I up to when I find myself strained? Am I narrowing my focus forward? Might I be in a rush? On one level, is that change in organization happening? And then we value it. Which organization is more pleasant? Which organization makes this task easier? When might one or the other be useful and why? And then apply. Am I able to explore this on my own? If not, what do I need to do so? How does this balance exploration work in different situations? Is it helpful to me? This is making it your own. So let's explore some more. Thanks. I invite you to join me standing up if that's comfortable for you. Otherwise, do whatever works for you. Follow your comfort as you engage in this material. Here I am, as I am. How are you? Take a moment to join me. Here I am, as I am. Meeting yourself exactly as you are, tired, alert. I am as I am. In the world, as it is. Look around the world, feel the temperature of the world, your space. Here we are, as we are, in the space, as it is, for this moment, in the simplicity of needing what is, pleasant or unpleasant, not needing to improve or fix anything right now. And include the support of the earth. Here's the earth coming up to meet us, going toward the moon, and the moon pulling and pushing on us. Here we are in gravity on this planet, supported by the planet. I am that idea of the suspension system for a moment. Your bone spreading, your musculature catching, and you're suspended and strung inside. And do look at the support materials, some articles and things to deepen this understanding, if it interests you. Today, as we play with roots and standing our ground, here we are, standing our ground. The first thing we'll do is enter into that leaning exploration, the balance work that I hope you played with this week, and add the element of noticing the way we're contacting the planet when we're in that shift. When I am leaning, I feel more contact or pressure with one foot than another. It's kind of an uneven contact. When I make an adjustment and I have that feeling of being in the center of support or not leaning, the contact with the surface is even. So test that out in a few motions. Let's just do it here again. If I lean, see if you can note the contact, more pressure, and then more even pressure, which oddly enough is like before, feels almost like less pressure. And let's take an activity like throwing something. I'm going to throw, and in that moment of the throw, it could be an uneven contact. And it's just that there's more pressure in that front foot. Or I could be an even contact, and the pressure through my toes in the back and my foot in the front, it feels much more even. Or bringing up an instrument. Let's use these three things. I could bring up an instrument and have that even contact, or more pressure on my heel or my toes here. Even, uneven. You could do this in a chair, more pressure on my tail, and then make it even between my feet and my tail. So pause the video for a moment and do this back and forth with yourself with that attention to the even distribution or uneven distribution of contact, to the contact points. Well, I'll add one more layer now to our exploration of balance. And this has to do with the effect on our power, or the flow of forces through us, depending on how we've gotten organized in terms of our balance. So if we go back to this kind of lunge where we reach, but we can take it into a task like shoveling. If I start to shovel and I get off support or more contact in the front, what are different ways you could feel this? Go back and forth. So if I'm in the one where I'm off support and then I start to the task of shoveling, and I start to think of it from the places of the way force is going through me, I get focuses of force. There's more pressure in my knee, my foot. That might get injured or worn out. If I do it again and again, that's a way to tell where the forces are focused, is where would hurt if I did this for an hour or 10 minutes. Now if I come back and explore, how do I shovel, some of us in winter climates, and have that even distribution of contact, which really is where the forces are distributed. So when I shovel, the force forward is distributed and flows back to the ground. The flow of force is ground and out. Then there's no force being focused in a part. I'm less vulnerable to injury. So being able to detect are forces focused or forces flowing is incredibly powerful information for making choice. I want to be very good at feeling where my forces are focused if I want the information from my own system about what will make a job easier or harder. So let's take it into that throwing. I could throw, and we almost naturally throw with that, the ability to have that power right from the ground right through us. In this case, I'm on one foot. That's in balance. But I could also do it like this. Boom. And then my forces are focused on the elbow, on the shoulder, and my lower back. So play with where's that distribution? Where's the break? And then I'll take our other example, the bringing up an instrument. I could play here, an even distribution, or I could be an uneven distribution, and the force gets focused somewhere. And if I have to have airflow, it's interesting, it's like, changing how I am in balance changes my airflow. It changes my functions. Airflow, power. If I'm out of that even distribution of contact, if I tend to be off support, that so many muscles are being recruited to balance me that I actually have to consciously add breath support, use muscles in a different way. If I'm in relation to the support and all of me is available, the support of the air and the breath comes through me and through the earth. I don't need to learn additional support. So explore that. Again, don't believe me. Play around with activities and feel the difference between a flow of force and a breaking of support and a focusing of support. And if you have pain or injury anywhere, this would be a wonderful territory to look, is how I walk such a way that my forces get focused on my lower back or my knee. And sometimes we just need help with that because it's habitual. So that's slightly different than this pedagogy here for group work, but it's a doorway to make those kind of personal observations. Pause and explore for a moment that your understanding of the different ways that force can flow through us or be focused. So now that we've explored balance and explored the different ways we can be organized in relationship to the planet, we're going to meet our bones. I'd like to do a little anatomy, a brief look at the joints from the ground to the top of our head this week and how that might relate to this entire territory of looking at our physical structure and efficiency. Meet Aha. These are my friends and will help us as we explore this kinesthetic mapping, this experiencing the joints in ourselves, locating them like landmarks. And I'll do a brief look at some common ways people will, and I have been organized in such a way that's limited my motion. And when I got clear of how I'm actually made, by going back to the source, the anatomy, a kind of liberation, harmonizing my understanding with how I work, the effect of that. So let's start with the very first joint we've already done, that may be the most important one, which is the joint between ourselves and the planet. And you will be surprised how many people get stuck there. So I'm doing a task, and instead of moving my feet, I just get planted. The next joint is the ankle. Well, there's lots and lots of incredible joints in the feet, which we won't be looking at, but they are wonderful to look at. But here's Aha's foot in relationship to the two bones of the lower leg. And one of the powerful things is, look at how that it's organized more like a T than an L. There's heel behind. So find your own ankle. We did this in a little bit of rocking. Just where that movement is, and have a sense that there's heel behind where that moving place is. For years, I was organized as if I thought I had an L for a foot. And as I began to explore and get more of that sense of a T where there was heel behind me, it had many ramifications for freedom of movement. This is speed mapping. We're going quickly. Then there's the knee, which is the joint is actually between the lower leg bones and the thigh bone, and the joint is below the kneecap. So, and one of the key things here is the knee is actually affected by the other joints. So I rarely ever give an instruction to the knee, like bend it or move it. That follows other things. And the main thing to know is that the thigh bone moves back from the lower leg. You can't actually move the thigh bone forward of the lower leg because of the construction of the knee. So it's about this backward from the lower leg. We come up to the hip socket, and that you can feel this trochanter, this outside bone, but the joint goes deep in where it meets the pelvis. And if you find it on yourself, the trochanter, that bony part is here. If you bring your thumb kind of in, almost, a little bit away from the pubic bone, the joint is deep inside here. You can kind of feel that if you squish a grape versus taking your whole body with it. It's right down here. And one of the main things that people can sometimes get confused is, so you'll hear that instruction, hip width apart, and people have their legs way out here, to the side, but the hip width, the actual hip socket, is quite close together. If you look at Aha doing the classic hip width apart, the legs are quite out. We don't get that natural flow of the thigh coming down. And I had quite a lot of knee trouble because in dance, I had always been in this sort of wide stance, and I walked quite wide. So my leg was really levering out. And anyway, there's an impact on how we understand where the hip sockets are and how our leg relates to that. And then we come up to the pelvic half, and I'm going to do it on this side because this is actually broken off. So this pelvic half goes from the pubic bone, pubic symphysis, the cartilage there between the two pubic bones, and has the hip socket in it, and then it comes back and has that sacroiliac joint where there's slight cushiony movement there, which is how the whole leg relates to the spine. And this is what we're really doing, is the relationship of the ground through our legs, up through our spine, or from the spine down to the earth. So find this in you, this pelvic half and the leg go together. There's movement here that when we cross over, it's movement at this joint coming together. We're not locked here necessarily, and we'll be looking at that in a minute as we scan up. Then there's the sacrum here, which is part of the spine. And you can see it here. The pelvis goes around it a bit. And it continues up with these cushiony joints. They're distortion joints, where the joints in the spine have discs in between. So when there's bending, it's charging up elastic force and wants to spring back. So the spine is like this spacer, flexible spacer, and it's quite deep inside of us. The bony processes that you can feel in the back, look at the distance between there and where the weight supporting part, or the weight transferring part, really the force transferring part of the spine is. So there's sacrum, all the joints of your spine. See if you can get them wiggling. This is what luxuriating can be about. All the way up to the roof of your mouth, way up here, behind your nose, between your ears, kind of, you had a line from here to here. Deep inside is where the joint for the head on top of the spine, which is a synovial joint, like these other joints where it's fluid-based compared to the spinal joints where it have discs. So two joints up here give us this really free, mobile head. So there we have it. Earth, ankle, knee, hip, sacroiliac, pubic symphysis, spinal joint, atlanto-occipital, AO joint up at the head. There are landmarks from top to bottom in literally like speed mapping. You can go back and take some time. I'd like to bring that together into a sense of two different ways, just a contrast moment, that we can be organized in this flow from the ground up through us and back down, that's influenced by understanding and mapping. So for years, I had a sense of sort of my pelvis being underneath me, my pelvic floor, and was working with all this balance and so forth, but had kind of a sense that I was organized around my sacrum was part of my pelvis. And my pelvis was its own thing, the bottom of my torso. And recently, it's gotten clearer, and you can look at the embryology too, that this sense of the pelvic half being part of my leg. So that means that the pubic bone then is the apex of the arch of my legs. That liberates my sacrum to not be pelvis so much as free spine. So really I have legs and then sacrum spine to allow my head to be free, rather than kind of legs, this something in the middle, and then sort of spine stuck up top. So play with this for a minute, this idea that your legs are connected through and you've got this pubic bone organization and your spine is free. And then do what's more typical of like there's a pelvis and I need to adjust or put the pelvis somewhere. And I've got this, I kind of stand on my sacrum, or whatever version of you understand or can see in me. It's more like I've got a backbone. I'm stable. And so first, identify, can you feel the difference, even if you have to fake it a little, between legs, pubic bone, free spine, legs and spine, versus legs, pelvis, spine. So go back and forth a few times. You might pause the video and see if you can actually identify that difference. That can take a while. And then, once you've done that, identified that, then describe it a little bit. How do these feel different? And I'll say a few of mine. For me, this could feel, at first it almost felt tippy, because it was so free. I find myself, whenever I come here, almost taking a step. And this more familiar felt stable, kind of. But if I use that focus of force assessment we did earlier, I do feel more force in my lower back, even in my knee. I definitely use, if I use the contact with the ground assessment, I'm a little more back on my heel versus through the hole when I'm forward. And in a way, it almost feels like the power when I'm in the pubic bone is through the front of me. It's like everything is kind of knitted and energized through the front versus being like, might feel open in the back, in the front when I'm back, knitted in the back and open in the front. But in a way, that's that very feeling of sort of weak abs. Often we don't have weak abs, we're just organized in the back. When we're in the center, it's the very organization that we get as a child, baby, to develop that power through the front. But that was mixing in what is the feeling of the difference with a little bit of information update that we are basically designed with this power through the leg. And play around, see how that affects you, if that's useful for you. Take it to shoveling, to the instrument, and see what you can make of this exploration of our roots, how we root with the ground so that we're free here, and how we stand our ground. Like, am I here or am I here? Or anything in between. So I hope that gives you something to explore this week, and certainly ask me questions. We did something I would normally do in months in about 25 minutes. All right. Thank you.